Some things are too shocking to believe, unless you see them for yourself. And what this camera captured on that hillside has left many people disturbed. Humanoid figures, strange movements, and animals reacting to something unseen. Today, you'll see the footage that made people question what was really out there.
Urban watcher. Someone noticed the bird first because it wasn't moving. It was sitting on the electrical wires above a quiet street, completely still, looking down at the houses. At a distance, it didn't seem strange, just another dark shape resting between the poles. But the person filming slowly zoomed closer. That's when the details started to stand out. The beak was long and curved in a way that didn't resemble the usual city birds. Its feathers looked rough, almost bristled, and the claws gripped the cable tightly. Neighbors later said they had never seen a bird like that in the area. Through the entire recording, it never moved. No wings, no sound, nothing. It simply remained there, watching the street below. Night transformation. The clip starts in a dark open area, somewhere with very little light. A man stands alone in the frame, while someone records from a short distance. At first, nothing unusual is happening. He simply begins to crouch down slowly, but the posture starts to change in a way that feels difficult to read. His silhouette lowers further, shoulders shifting, the shape of the body becoming harder to recognize. Within a few seconds, the outline no longer looks clearly human. What appears in the frame resembles a large black dog standing where the man was. The movement looks continuous. No visible cut. The video quality is poor, and that makes everything harder to judge. Some viewers call it a nahual caught on camera. Others think it's careful editing. Forest figure. The photograph started circulating quietly online before spreading everywhere. No one seemed to know exactly where it was taken. In the image, a figure stands hunched among trees, its body covered in thick hair. At first glance, it looks human, but the proportions feel slightly off. The arms appear too long, the posture too heavy, almost animal. When people zoom in, the face becomes harder to read. Not clearly a mask, not clearly an animal either, just a shape that doesn't settle into anything familiar. Some viewers say it's obvious digital editing. Others insist the image feels older than the internet itself, like something lifted from old European folklore. There's still no confirmed origin for the photo, only the figure frozen there. Night walker. The camera was already recording when the animal entered the frame. It looked like a wolf moving quietly through the darkness at the edge of the road. Nothing unusual at first, just a shape passing through the beam of light. Then it stopped. For a moment, the body shifted, almost like it was adjusting its balance, and slowly it rose. The front legs lifted until the animal appeared to stand upright on two legs. Its eyes caught the light and reflected back sharply toward the camera. Cave watcher. The video begins deep in a wooded area, somewhere in rural Mexico. A man is pointing his phone toward the entrance of a small cave. At first, the opening looks empty, just a dark space between rocks. Then, something moves. Inside the shadow, a small figure slowly steps forward, cautious, as if checking the outside first. Only part of the body becomes visible. The skin appears pale under the weak light of the camera. Its limbs look thin, almost fragile, and the proportions don't resemble any animal people usually see in these forests. The person filming starts breathing harder, and the camera shakes slightly. Locals later called it a duende. What matters is the moment it steps out. Abandoned cage. The owner hadn't visited the property in years. When he finally returned, it was only to look around before selling the land. Most of the field was empty, just dry grass and old metal scattered around. Then he noticed the cage. It was sitting alone near the edge of the property, rusted and half buried in weeds. The strange part was the lock. It was closed from the inside. When he stepped closer with the camera, something moved in the darkness. A large body, covered in thick hair, was sitting quietly behind the bars. Then, the head lifted slightly. The face showed a heavy, worn beak, unlike any bird people recognize. The creature didn't react. It only breathed slowly. Trough visitor. Workers at San Alejo Ranch began noticing the problem with the cattle trough. Every morning, the water level was lower than it should have been. No broken pipe, no leak, no tracks around the mud. At first, they blamed the heat. Then, one morning, they arrived early and saw something already there. A creature standing beside the water. Its body looked thin and strange, with stretched wings made of veined skin instead of feathers. The head carried a curved beak that caught the sunlight as it lowered to drink. When it lifted its face, the eyes looked almost human. One of the workers started filming quietly. The creature slowly turned its head toward them. Breathing ground, workers arrived before sunrise and noticed a section of soil moving. At first, it looked like damp earth, slowly lifting and settling again, almost like breathing. No animal tracks around it, no hole, just wet ground, pulsing quietly in the early light. One of them started digging to see what was underneath. The first thing that appeared was a curved claw, pushing through the mud. Then, a large head emerged behind it, hairless skin, a mouth hanging open as if frozen in mid-cry. The teeth looked long and rodent-like, but the eyes held narrow pupils that didn't seem animal. For a moment, the creature barely moved. Then, it turned its head toward them.
Drifting vessel. An old military ship had been drifting quietly off the coast of Florida for years. No crew, no activity, just a rusted structure left to the current. People believed it was completely empty. Then, a drone scanning the vessel detected heat coming from below deck, specifically from the engine compartment. There was only one way to look inside. A shattered porthole along the side of the hull. Someone leaned closer and pointed the camera through the broken glass. At first, the compartment looked flooded and dark. Then, something rose slowly from the water. A smooth head covered in small nodules, with black eyes reflecting the faint light. It didn't move. It only watched. Caught at sea, the video begins on a small fishing boat, already surrounded by shouting. Several men are pulling something heavy over the side. No one explains what they hooked in the water. But once it lands on the deck, the tension changes immediately. The shape looks disturbingly human from the waist up. Below, the body narrows into something more like a tail. The creature doesn't stay still for a second. It thrashes constantly, forcing the fishermen to hold it down with both arms. Ropes are thrown over it, but they don't seem to help much. Its skin appears pale under the sun, and the eyes remain open the entire time. No one in the boat tries to explain it. Riverbank carrier. For weeks, farmers in the area had been losing goats from their pens. Fences near the river kept appearing broken by morning, but no tracks were ever found. Two men decided to follow the riverbank at dawn to see what might be coming through the trees. The air was quiet, the ground still damp from the night. Then something stepped into a clearing ahead of them. A large figure walking upright, its body covered in thick black fur. It moved slowly, almost calmly, and in its arms, it carried a live goat, not dragging it, not biting it, just holding it carefully against its chest. The men filmed only a few seconds before it disappeared into the forest.
Tunnel watcher. A man walking near the entrance of an old tunnel noticed something above him. At first, it looked like a bat hanging from the stone ceiling, the kind you sometimes see resting in dark places. But something about the shape made him stop and take out his phone. As the camera moved closer, the proportions began to feel strange. The body looked longer than expected, almost stretched downward. The wings hung stiffly along the sides instead of folding naturally. For a moment, the posture even suggested something almost human. The creature never reacted to the presence of the camera. No sound, no movement. It simply remained there, suspended in the darkness. Backyard visitor. In a rural house, someone was recording casually in the yard when a child noticed movement in the background. At first, it looked small, almost the size of another kid standing near the wall. The camera turned slowly toward it. That's when the figure became clear. A small creature moving with quick, restless jumps across the ground. Its posture was strange, energetic in a way that didn't resemble any animal people usually see around farms. For a moment, it remained visible near the edge of the yard. Then, it moved toward a low wall, built from stacked stones. Without hesitation, it slipped behind it, disappearing completely from view, almost as if it already knew the exact place to hide. Garden hunter. In Bolivia, someone noticed movement inside a small farm enclosure during the night. Chickens and rabbits had been disappearing, but no one knew what was taking them. The person filming moved carefully between the plants to get closer without being seen. Through the leaves, a small figure could be seen inside the pen. It moved low to the ground, quick and precise, stopping only when it reached the animals. The creature ate in silence. No loud struggle, no frantic movement, just short bursts of motion, and then stillness again. From a distance, it looked almost human in size, but the way it moved didn't resemble a person. The camera kept recording quietly. Henhouse visitor. Workers were doing the usual morning count when someone noticed one of the oldest hens hadn't moved. She was crouched in the corner of the enclosure, calm, almost resting. But she wasn't alone. Right beside her sat a dark figure no one recognized. Its body looked covered in dense black feathers, darker than anything in the coop. At first, the shape seemed almost human in size. Then the head tilted slightly, and the beak became visible, long and curved. There were no clear eyes reflecting the light, just a smooth, silent face. The hen didn't panic. She didn't try to escape. For a moment, the entire farm went quiet. Then, the figure slowly lifted its head toward the camera. Burning silhouette. Campers called emergency services after seeing what looked like a burning bird high in a tree. From a distance, the glow suggested the start of a forest fire. Firefighters arrived, expecting to find flames spreading through the brush. Instead, they found a single oak standing alone. Its crown was darkened, almost charred, but nothing around it was burning. On the highest branch, something stood perfectly still. A large silhouette shaped like a bird, its outline surrounded by slow-moving flames. It didn't struggle or try to escape the fire. The light climbed along its body as if it belonged there. One firefighter began recording from the ground below. Then the wings slowly opened. Sky anchor. Several calls reached the county sheriff about something large hovering over farmland near the old irrigation line. At first, they assumed it was a hobby drone flying too close to the fields. But the reports kept coming, and radio signals in the western sector began cutting out. When Deputy Harlan arrived, the sky had turned flat gray above the harvested cornfield. Nothing moved in the air. Then he saw it. About 30 feet above the ground, something was suspended over the field. From a distance, it resembled a giant glider. As he stepped closer, the wings became clear. Huge membranes stretched between long skeletal supports. Beneath them hung a robed human-like figure, perfectly still. Then, the head slowly turned toward him. Dry reservoir. The old irrigation reservoir outside Garden City had been empty for months. What remained was a wide basin of cracked clay, surrounded by rusted fencing and abandoned farm equipment. A local teenager named Marcus was helping clear old feed sacks from the dry ground. The afternoon heat hung over the basin, without wind or insects. Nearby, a thin horse shifted nervously beside the fence. Then, the ground vibrated faintly beneath Marcus's boots. At first, it felt like distant machinery, but the sound was coming from below. A narrow crack opened slowly in the dry clay at his feet. From the darkness underneath, something pale pressed upward through the soil. Not rock, not dirt, just a smooth, curved surface, rising quietly from the reservoir floor. Fence line hybrid. 2 wildlife officers arrived at an isolated cattle farm after reports of something tearing open feed bags at night. The pasture was empty when they stepped through the gate. Winter grass, bending slowly in the damp wind. One of them noticed movement near the fence line. At first, it looked like a large wolf crawling under the wire. But when it pulled itself into the open ditch, both men stopped. The head and shoulders resembled a wolf, wet fur pressed flat along its neck. Behind that, the body spread outward into layered feathers, forming a wide armored fan. They shimmered faint green and blue in the gray light. The animal lowered its head and inhaled slowly, then looked directly toward the camera. Field figures, a drone flying over farmland, recorded what first looked like a small group of cattle moving along a grassy hillside. From the height of the camera, nothing seemed unusual, just animals walking slowly across the field. But as the drone moved closer, the shapes began to change. The bodies looked massive, muscular, with the horns and heads of bulls. Yet the way they stood wasn't animal at all. They were upright, walking on 2 legs across the slope. One figure in the distance appeared smaller, moving between the larger ones as they crossed the field together. The camera kept recording from above, while the group continued forward. No one in the footage approaches them. They simply move through the farmland.